All right, everybody. It is Thursday night. It is 7 o'clock Central, and y'all know what that is. It's time for conversations with Commodores. And I have a very special guest with us tonight, Coach Jeff Madden, who played in the 70s but has been involved in the college football world for many years since. We'll get into all that. Good evening, Coach. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Good to be here.
Well, we're so glad that you've got some time for us, and I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight. And for those of you who may not know Jeff or know of his involvement, he played in the late 70s, early 80s for Coach Mack, played for coaches, let's see, Fulmer, Mantooth, and Crook.
Those are my line coaches.
That's right. And then later played in the USFL before coming into college. Coach, for folks who haven't caught up with you lately, tell them about your last year or two and what keeps you busy these days.
Well, what's keeping me busy is, I'm a grandpa now, first of all.
Congrats,
Then
that's awesome.
I've got my boys, and my boys are all grown up. They play ball, and now they're grown men. So, I'm still spreading the word and teaching people out here. I've been blessed to coach over 35,000 athletes. So I'm in contact with a bunch of them. It's amazing how much my phone still rings, from guys that I coached, back in the early 80s, comparatively to even the ones from the past few years. So I'm only coaching their kids now. So, I got guys bringing me their kids. So it's a great situation for me.
That's awesome. Coach Mark Matlock says to tell you hello.
Okay. All right. That's my man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, Coach, tell us a little bit about, I know that fitness and strength and conditioning has been part of your life for probably most of, not all your athletic career and professional career. But how did you get started into that path? What was it about the strength and conditioning and that really interests you to propel you for the last 4+ decades?
Well, Bernard, just so you know, and the people out there know, my dad was a Marine. So I woke up every single day, hitting those push-ups and pull-ups, sit-ups and folding the corners on my bed to make sure everything was straight. So, he came straight out of the Marine Corps, when I was a little guy, and he taught me a lot about physical fitness. Then he also was a martial artist. So I learned martial arts, so now you got two different things going. And then you add sports into that afterwards, which all martial arts helped me with sports, and flexibility and that kind of stuff. So when all those things went on, I saw how I developed. I saw my teammates develop. I watched and, also saw how our bodies changed, our minds changed, our attitudes changed. And we took a program that had been at a low level for a long time and brought it back, and went to the Hall of Fame Bowl. I watched the guy walk around. My first strength coach that I ever had was a guy by the name of Martin Poe. And Coach Poe owned sporting goods store right there in Nashville. He did a great job with us, and he worked us with our power and explosion, I think he called it, and he worked us well. We had a bunch of guys leave the team because they didn't like that kind of work. I stayed and stuck it through and learned a lot from him. Then we got a guy come in there in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and he had an apartment right there close to campus, and he was driving a brand new Jeep, and he knew everybody in town. He was bringing everybody in the weight room, and we got to meet the infamous Doc Crease. And I don't know if you were there when he was there, but Doc did a tremendous job, with us, not only in the strength and conditioning department. He did a great job with helping us bond as a team. And I saw that person that has that job is a key person to your university, because Doc worked with the police. He worked with, people on campus. So we always had professors on campus coming by and meeting us. He had everybody from McConnell's Catering. Then he had Billy, Bobby, and Danny, the police officers were in there working out every day. He had detectives. He had all kind of folks from the city and, government officials that came in and learned about us, as people, as opposed to just athletes, and what that did was that really helped us do well because we had a whole lot of people pulling for us all the time. Mm-hmm. So I saw that. I saw how he was like the mayor there almost, because he was such a popular person, and I said, well, I might want to do that. There's a guy there that you probably know by the name of Watson Brown.
My coach.
He's your coach. Okay. He was my coach too. He's a great guy. And Watson came in as the offensive coordinator, changed our whole offense, put me on the field, made a lot of things happen, and did a tremendous job with us. And Watson took the job at the University of Cincinnati in 1982, after the 82 season, after the Hall of Fame Bowl game. And he came to me and asked me, Mad Dog, he said, do you think you can teach my guys how to lift weights and all that? Because he saw me there every day. I mean, I lived in the weight room, and I said, yeah, coach, I'll make you famous being funny, as I always am, and Watson took a chance. He took me and he made me a grad assistant on the field. So I coached D-line and O-line too. I did both. And then also I was a strength and conditioning coach. And I was 21. I had just turned 21 when I took the job. So he had a lot of faith in me and I didn't let him down. We opened up the season against Penn State, who had won the national championship the year before. And we beat Penn State at home in State College, and what I loved about Watson is when the newspapers came to him, he said, they said, well, why'd you win? What was all that barking in the tunnel? What was all that martial arts stuff they were doing? Those guys were excited. Why were your guys so excited? And Watson he pointed at me and said, it's the Mad Dog factor. Mad Dog did that, and I was like, wow, coach, we did it together. But I was just so impressed that he told them that I was the reason why. And that's where it all started. And I still got the article. I still got it here in my file cabinet.
Awesome. Because you were 21 at the time?
21
you
years
probably
old.
Had players your age or older on the roster.
I had both. I had them my age and older.
Wow.
But my military background and I'm an inner city guy, so I was able to handle those guys. I mean, he had a University of Cincinnati, the Bearcats, they had a lot of guys that were from the city, from Cincinnati, Columbus, Cleveland, all that kind of stuff. So coach had somebody in there that could relate to them, talk to them. If you had to put a foot in their butt, did that too, and it was really a tremendous bonding experience for myself and the players because I watched what Doc did. I put some of what my dad did, with the Marine style and everything. And they had never had that before. So all of a sudden they had somebody who was right there with them that, did discipline work, and my rights had been picked up from the Birmingham Stallions in the USFL to go to Memphis Showboats. Mm-hmm. So I had that option, either stay coaching or to go play. Mm-hmm. And once our season was over, Watson took the job at Rice University, and got that program going. And I went to the Memphis Showboats. Okay, so
I want to pause you because I want to come back to the USFL in just a minute.
Okay.
But Coach, we got so many folks rolling in. I got to give you some shout outs from them.
Okay.
One of the beloved Keystone Cops, Billy Smith, sends some love your way. Joe Staley says to tell you hello. Kenny Cole.
I can hit them all. It makes no difference. Joe Staley's my guy. Joe Staley's room was right down the hall from mine. He let me borrow his car all the time to go meet my wife and girlfriend back then. I mean, Joe's just a great guy right out of Dallas, Texas. His dad and mom adopted me into their family and showed all kind of love. And they did that back in 1979, and they still do it today. Wow. So those are the relationships that you build in this wonderful game that we play.
You know, teammates for 4 or 5 years, but teammates for life, actually.
For life. It's not a, you know, and Mac Brown's really good about that. He tells these kids it's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision when you decide what school you're going to go to.
And that's another topic. I want to talk about the Brown brothers as well. But Kenny Cole said that you were called up as a freshman to sing in front of the team, and something happened. Do you remember this?
I think Kenny might be able to tell the story a little bit better than I do.
Well, then you tell me if do you remember the event?
No, go ahead. What did they tell me I did so many things as a freshman. I was pretty quiet.
That as a freshman, a senior called you up in front of everybody to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And you stepped in front of everybody, looked the senior in the eye, and said, "My name is Jeff Madden. My friends call me Mad Dog, and I don't sing for anybody."
Oh, no doubt. I said that. I remember telling them my name was Mad Dog. You know, Jeff Mad Dog, man. Somebody said Mad Puppy. And I said, yeah, well, we'll see tomorrow. You know, because back then we came in, the freshmen came first. So we had almost a week before it seemed like a week. It was probably 4 days before the varsity ever came in. And from that given point, you know, we had to go, you know, we went against the varsity. You know, they told us when we were being recruited that you weren't going against the varsity on the first day. But lo and behold, they put me in the hole in the Oklahoma drill, as it's called, with Big Roscoe Hale, Lord rest his soul. You know, Big Ronald Hale was, you know, every bit of 6'6", 350 pounds, grown man, you know, just had so much power and explosion. And we went head to head on the very first one. So, I mean, you know, I was representing the freshman class. I took a lot of pride in that, you know, and guys like Kenny Cole, those guys were there. They got after it. They had a great time. And we found ways to win because Vanderbilt had not had the successful time. Part of the reason I came to Vanderbilt is there was 13 of us on a recruiting trip. And, you know, the Joe Staley's and Zach Spradlin, Diamond Jim, Pat Saindon. I mean, it was a tremendous group. Alamo Matthews, you know, just great guys that were great players that we all came together and we made a decision on that weekend that we were coming to Vanderbilt, you know, and that's the first place I went to where that whole class got together and made that decision. You know, and one thing about it, I was from Cleveland, Ohio. I was All-American just like several other guys. You know, I could have gone anywhere. I thought I was going to Michigan, as a matter of fact. You know, my mama said I was going to Vanderbilt because they had more Rhodes Scholars than anybody. You know, so as that went down, you know, Rob Monaco was there. I mean, those guys are great guys. They're friends for life. You can go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just amazed. I've never heard that story that there were so many of you on the same recruiting visit that you guys collectively made that decision. How awesome. That's incredible.
Well, then, and it's like McIntyre used to tell me, you know, you got a bunch of leadership skills there, son. So, wow. But the bottom line is we had such a great time. You know, I mean, there was, you know, Mark Matthews, there were Big Shaw, Eugene Shaw. I mean, there were some guys there and we all liked each other. We had a good time, you know, and that group stayed true to their word and everybody came, you know, because it was a great situation because, you know, you got SEC football and, you know, it wasn't hyped as big as it is now, you know, because social media has taken it through the roof, you know, to talk about how great it is. I mean, and it is good. It's very good. You know, I'm excited about SEC all the time, you know, and we'll talk about Texas and SEC. I know you get those questions too, you know, but, you know, the games were on television every week. And that's what made the decision for all of us that were from out of state. You know, I mean, you know, Danny Stafford, I mean, all those guys were from Florida. I was from Ohio. You know, we had Terry Dugan was from Ohio. We both came together, you know, so you had guys from all over the country that were coming to Nashville, Tennessee. Why? You know, because we felt as though there was something special there. And our whole group said, we'll turn it. We can turn it. You know, the bottom line is we all came from winning programs. I was at a school where we lost one game in the 4 years I played. We lost one football game, and that was the state championship. So we all knew how to win, and we wanted to get with those older guys like your Flavia Smiths and Kenny Cole and, all those big time players, Van Heflin, and I'm saying names, and some of these guys are dead now, so I mean, that's hurting my heart as I'm talking, but they're great guys. Rod Gurley, and it's like the big fella said, it ain't nothing but a street fight. I understood street fights. When you coming from Cleveland, Ohio, you understand what a street fight is. And we had to teach, other guys, let's mix it up. Let's go get it. This has to be important. You had guys like Terry Potter, you had Whit Taylor. I mean, you had some guys on that team now, Norman Jordan, Keith Edwards. I mean, these are guys that came to play football. Mm-hmm. And what we did was we all bonded. We didn't see color. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And at that time, when you're talking about 1979, our whole world was having problems, just like we're having a lot of problems nowadays. Yeah. But it was like that. And football and sports brought us all together, and that's what made the place so great.
I had Keith Edwards on the show a few months ago, and he echoed similar sentiments of what you're saying about coming together. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he did say was the colors that you guys collectively saw were black and gold.
No question.
And that was unifying. And Jeff, in the fall, I know you know this, in 79, 1-10, then improved to 2-9.
1-10, 2-9.
4-7.
4-7, 8-3.
And then 8-3 going into the.
And that was Hall of Fame ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know it because it's ingrained in our brain. Because the bottom line was, you have to be consistently good to be great. You don't just become great. You don't just go beat Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, and all the other teams. You just can't beat them all when everybody is together. So what you got to do is you got to take that herd of guys, and you got that 125 guys, and you got to lead them straight down the field together. And everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody has to be on one accord. If you got some fraying off this way or fraying off that way, hell, it ain't going to work. But when you got everybody, when you got the trainers, you got the managers, you got the daggone strength coaches, you got everybody fired up and ready to go fight to the end, you got a chance to win. But if some people are just off doing their own thing, if you got guys looking up in the stands talking about how hot the cheerleaders are, oh, I can't wait to get the Jonesies, we got to get some beer and all that other crap that was there before, those guys had to move on and do their thing. And then all the rest of us had to come together, and we all had to fight together. Because when Florida walked in there and they were number 2 in the country, they just thought they were just going to roll over for a little Vanderbilt. Then when they got smacked in the face a few times and woke their ass up, we won. But it was all great effort from everybody. You got a guy like Rob Monaco, rest his soul, that was one of my best friends. That's not with us anymore. But the big fella, he busted his hump so hard on one play, and the ball fumbled in the end zone. So we're like 20 yards down the field, and he crawls over people, rolls over people to get the ball and recover the ball. It's a touchdown. We win the game. Mm-hmm. And then Florida's sitting up there, oh, man, we lost to Vanderbilt. Yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you did.
And from my tenure, I was in the late 80s under Watson Brown. We also smacked Florida at home in 1988, a regional TV game. And they didn't think that they were going to have any problems with our Vanderbilt team, but they sure did that game. But Jeff,
amazing,
Dwayne Jones says to tell you hello.
Hello.
Also says to tell you thank you for taking care of his brother Jody and his nephew Ashton when they came to Texas this summer.
Oh yeah, Jody Jones. Jody Jones is the dentist to the stars. That is Jody is Lucy's son, and Lucy and Doug Jones, and Lucy worked there at Vanderbilt. I don't know, 40 plus years. Yeah. So I got to know Jody when he was a youngster, and he used to come down to the weight room, and train and hang around the team, just like little Mike McIntyre and Matt McIntyre. All those guys, all those kids were down there, and Jody and I have been great friends over the years. Jody's out there. He's doing The Rock the great wrestler. He's doing Mark Henry. He's doing his main man is the Undertaker. I mean, all these guys are friends of mine too. So to be able to, have some of the best in the world in their craft, and then it means Jody's one of the best in the world of his craft too.
He sure is. And thank you for that shout out for those guys. Coach, how did you get out of Cleveland, Ohio, the heart of the Big Ten? You said you were thinking you were going to Michigan, but Mama had other plans. But tell me about your recruitment a little bit.
I came out of Cleveland St. Joe's High School, and once again, I said I was a All-American and All-City, All-State, All-Scholastic. I had all those awards, but all those awards came because I had a great coach. I had a great head coach, but I also had an awesome offensive line coach, and Coach John Story was my offensive line coach. And he was also the wrestling coach. So he used to drag me around the ring a little bit, and he's a great Christian man, great Catholic guy. And he kind of adopted me because I was a basketball player. I was on the basketball team, and he pulled me off the basketball team and put me in a football jersey. I never hit nobody like that except for on the street, and I remember coming off the sideline and the first game he got me to play in, and the guy grabbed my face mask and was pulling me by my face mask. And I was like, that's weird. I said, Coach, can he do that? Can he just grab my face mask like that and pull on it? He's like, no, Jeff, don't let him do it. So, I'm out there next time guys grab my face mask. I'm out there doing martial art techniques on him and putting him down. Coach, Coach, you can't do that, Jeff. You can't do all that. You just got to get him off you. So he taught me the game of football, and to this day, our relationship is tremendously strong. I mean, I take him out to eat every time. He's a coach. So, I mean, he comes to the coaches convention, football coaches convention. So every time I see him, we go out to lunch and have a great time. And we're talking about, that's almost 40 years, and, I wrote about him in the book and that kind of stuff. He's just a phenomenal man that's helped a bunch of children, a bunch of young guys become men. And that was his thing. So all the things and all the sayings and all the stuff I learned over the years, I learned from great people that have done the game for a long time and have been extremely successful. So to get out of Cleveland, I was getting ready to go to a trip at Ohio State. And the week before was when Coach Woody Hayes had that accident with the kid. He hit the kid on the sideline. I don't know if you're you were too young to remember that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, he did that. And my mom was like, you cannot go there. So I go to Michigan the next week. And, they got 105,000 or whatever, 106,000. It's a great trip. I get to meet Bo Schembechler. I'm getting recruited by Madden Vuletic, who I end up working with at Rice, and we're friends forever. I coach both of his kids, as a matter of fact, in North Carolina, and just great guy. And Milo said, he told my high school coach that, Mad Dog's a little short. He's not, exactly 6'3" like y'all got him. He's more of a 6'2" guy. We can move him over to nose guard, and because I was playing offensive line, but he didn't ever tell me that. He told me I was fine, so I happened to hear that when I was in there. Coaches' offices are, they just had those little bitty separate things, and I had come out of class to come meet with them, and they heard him say that. And then I'm like, if you're going to be straight with me, be straight with me, but don't. I didn't know how the college football world was like a bunch of used car salesmen. I thought people were honest and told the truth all the time. And then that was my first lesson in that. So then I go down to, I get on a plane and go to West Virginia, the Mighty Mountaineers, and Cignetti was the coach then. And I had a great weekend. It was really fun. And they had the Cleveland connection. So they had about 10 guys from Cleveland, Ohio, that were really the basis of their team, and several of them ended up getting drafted. Daryl Talley and, names like that, just great players. And those were the guys I trained with in the off season, you know, and then I had Anthony Hancock down in Tennessee, and he was trying to get me to come to Tennessee, you know, and I didn't understand the Tennessee Vandy rivalry there because I'm from Ohio. Only rivalry I knew was Ohio State, Michigan.
Sure.
You know, so anyway, long story short, I get snowed out of 2 weekend visits back to back because we had such a bad snowstorm in Cleveland. All right. The 3rd week, I change over to come to Vanderbilt. And I get off the plane in Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee, and I got on all my cold weather gear, you know, boots and all that kind of stuff. And you got guys and girls running around in shorts and T-shirts. And, you know, I'm like, what the heck? You know, I mean, you have folks out there sunbathing. I mean, it was amazing to me, you know, that a place could be, it was that much different in the South than it was up north, you know, and we had a great weekend. And like I said, Van Heflin and Big Rod Gurley, Marshall Cheatham, Mark Brown, the whole Chicago clique were there, and they were my hosts. You know, we had a wonderful weekend because we were there were several parties at Fisk and at Tennessee State. So, you know, you got to see, you know, folks that kind of look like you know, not to say at that time in those years, it was different. So, you know, it was good to have somebody that accepted you automatically and you knew you had somewhere else to go in case something didn't happen the way you needed for it to happen.
Well, I was going to say outside of the athletics teams, at least in the late 70s, it was largely a white population from a student body standpoint.
Yeah, we were less than 1% black at Vanderbilt.
And frankly, only until the last decade or two has that evolved over time. But what they did, Bernard, I didn't mean to cut you off, but what they did was the university itself started trying to promote to get more African-American and brown people at the university. So they started having the different engineering programs. They had, you know, a lot of different programs because there were a lot of different females. They were really pushing to have more Black females at the university, you know, and kind of offset, you know, what was going over in our area. So. And I don't know what year it was founded, but I know that there was the Black Student Alliance was created maybe in the late 70s or early 80s. I'm not sure.
I was there. I was in school then. So yeah, we used to call it the Afro House back then.
I gotcha.
It was called the Afro House, you know, before it was called the Black Student Alliance. And it was just one little house, you know, right at the top of the hill on the backside. And that's where we all met. That's where we all spent time and, you know, study time and everything else. And people got to know each other. So that was the more comfortable area for folks there. And the university allowed us to have that. Then it's expanded since then, I'm sure.
Sure.
You know, because it was just one house. Yeah. So
what ultimately sold Vanderbilt to you as opposed to Michigan or any of the other big schools that you were considering?
Well, first of all, Phil Former did a tremendous job. You know, he's a great recruiter. I don't know if you know Phil, but he is the athletic director at Tennessee. He had played at Tennessee. He was a head football coach at Tennessee, but he was the offensive line coach at Vanderbilt before all that. You know, and he did a great job with my mom. He did a great job with my dad, and he did a great job talking about the academics of Vanderbilt University. Then he brought in Monty Crook, who was Coach Max. I don't know if he was his brother-in-law or what he was, but he was also an offensive line coach. And they did a phenomenal job. They came to all my games. They were consistent, you know, and like I said, I thought I was going to Michigan when the letter came in. And my mom said, well, he's going where all the Rhodes Scholars are, because she wanted me to, you know, and I did a great job in my academics, you know, coming up, you know, and it was either that or I was going to try to go to the Naval Academy. So
wow.
I didn't want the 8-year commitment myself.
Yeah.
But she wanted academics. My mom was a sticker on academics.
It's amazing what moms can get accomplished with their children sometimes.
Oh yeah, no question.
Guys, I'm talking with Coach Jeff Madden, and we're coming along in his journey. Kenny Cole wants to know, or wants me to ask you about your memories of teammate Phil Swindoll.
Well, matter of fact, I got Phil Swindoll's name down here, and is Phil okay? Ask him that.
Yeah, Kenny, if you can give us any update or tell us, I'm not sure, but if he responds, if Kenny's still watching, I'll share that.
Well, I can see Phil, as we're talking right now with the blonde hair, slender legs. He was a pistol. He come off the ball from that linebacker position, coming fast as he could. Him and Kenny, both played hard as they could, for Vanderbilt, gave it up. Both of those guys are either a year or two older than me, but they were good guys, and they love Vanderbilt, and as a matter of fact, I still talk to Kenny on Facebook, quite often, and he checks in. I mean, my man Ken Hammond, is unbelievable. I mean, Kenny Hammond is from Valley Head, Alabama.
He sure is. He sure is.
Pride of Valley Head. He is the man, and he was a guy that I spent a whole lot of time with, him and Tim Moore. Mm-hmm. We did traveling, and, we, wherever we went, we were each other's bodyguards, mm-hmm. As we traveled from state to state, and great friends, mm-hmm. And then you got Keith Phillips, who was a phenomenal guy, played center next to me and worked out with me. And he's a great guy, always has been. He's still trying to get me to come back to Nashville, and I'm listening. I just said we just got to find a job out there for me, to get me back, but those guys are guys that you live and die with, those guys. And that offensive line group we had was unbelievable, and how close we all stayed. You had Lloyd Hudgens, you had Woody Woodman, you had some guys there, and Pat Sain and I talked about, we lost Rob Monaco, we lost Ronald Hill, we've lost some great players. Ronnie Myrick was a beast playing free safety. It would knock your teeth out. I mean, he's gone too, but there's so many of them. So we need to make sure. That's why I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, because we're celebrating everybody and get to talk about them. I mean, Ricky Dean was a big D lineman, first time I lined up on offensive line and had to hit Ricky Dean, he broke my face mask. I mean, he broke my face mask. Wow. He didn't dent it, he broke it, and that big old forearm he had, half my mask was up here, the other half came through, and his forearm was right there by my eyes.
Wow.
So I'm like, wow, that's power. So we've had some great guys, that really got after it.
Well, Coach, Dante Ferguson gives a shout out to you, says to tell you.
Hello, Dante.
Dante was one of my teammates, and another one of mine, Mike Heels from Cincinnati. Mike,
there you go.
I'm trying to, were you from St. X? I can't remember, Mike, which school you were from in Cincinnati. Please put that in the comments if you're still with us, and I'm sorry I forgot that. But one thing is dawning on me, Coach, as we're talking. You have just listed 20 to 30 of your former teammates. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you've got them on the tip of your tongue and that you remember stories about them from back in the day says to me that you must have been one of the ultimate teammates. The fact that you care, the fact that you remember these guys. I wished I'd have been on one of the teams for you, because frankly, playing quarterback, I want you protecting me. I don't want you coming after me.
Oh yeah.
But
that's what Whit Taylor would say that.
Absolutely.
So they like me in there.
Absolutely. And I had the pleasure of having one of these conversations with Kurt several months ago, and I'm trying to get to it. There's so many guys to get to. It's hard to line them all up. But guys, I'm talking with Jeff Madden, who played in the late 70s, early 80s for Coach Mack. I want you to talk about one of my former coaches, or the coach during my time period, Greg Mantooth. Talk about Mantooth.
Okay. I will talk about Mantooth, but I want to hit some of these other guys. Then go to Mantooth if you like.
Go for
it. You mentioned some of these guys. I mean, I had breakfast with Tim Bryant. Tim Bryant came out. I was there probably 3 weeks ago to train some guys in Nashville. And Tim Bryant and Gurley and John Pointer came out, to the hotel. We had a great breakfast and conversation and talked about Vandy. I mean, you got a guy like Willie Twyford, who was a beast. Steve Bearden. We lost Bob O'Connor this past year, another great player, great guy. Jeff Cartwright's a great one. Jeff Mcferrin. I hadn't seen a running back yet, and I've had several that have won Heisman trophies that were as quick and elusive and can change directions as fast as Lucius High could. And people don't understand that. Lucius High was right there in Nashville, and he had some things going on that he didn't get to stay at Vanderbilt for the whole time, but he played in one spring game and he got 4 touchdowns every time he touched the ball. He scored a touchdown in the spring game. He was a phenomenal guy, to change directions at the drop of a dime. I mean, I had Big Bill Fletcher came from Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, these guys, Charles Edwards was a guy that was like a preacher that was on our team. He was a wide receiver. Marcus Williams was a phenomenal guy. Marcus played running back, and we had a thing kind of like what Coach Lee is doing right now, to where you have to get your number and to get your name on the back of your jersey and all that kind of stuff. You have to earn it, that kind of stuff. And Marcus's thing was, we had black pants, and you could wear your black pants during the week if you did a tremendous job in the game. So Marcus scored a bunch of touchdowns one game, and Coach Mack presented him his black pants at practice. And Marcus didn't take his black pants. And Coach was like, Marcus, well, you got to take these pants. He said, no, Coach, I don't want them. He said, Marcus, why don't you want these pants? Everybody, that's what these guys are fighting for, the black pants. And Marcus said that he didn't want to wear his black pants until everybody could wear their black pants, because he said he didn't score all them touchdowns by himself, so he wanted everybody. And that's what I mean by team and bonding and guys giving of themselves to be the best that they can possibly be. Those are the type of things we learned. You got Carl Allen, Dr. Carl Allen, lives out in Vegas now. He's another guy that was a all SEC safety, phenomenal guys. Now we're going to get on, I didn't even mention Jimmy Arnold, who was one of the best I've ever seen, and a great, he was Roscoe P. Coltrane from Dukes of Hazzard. He's the best impressionist I've seen. And, Jim Arnold, he a kicker can win a game for you, and they don't understand that. But a punter can win a bunch of games too, and his average was unbelievable. And he saved us so much to allow us to be undefeated at home, So Jimbo, phenomenal guy. Got to see him in a lot of different pro teams. He came by Texas several times when he was doing his thing, and excited about it. Now, Greg Mantooth. I'll get on Greg Mantooth now. Greg Mantooth was my offensive line coach, I think, the last 2 years. He came in with Watson, and those guys are pretty much inseparable. I also coached with Greg Mantooth. So I went to University of Cincinnati with Greg, and I had his offensive lineman that I were helping with, and he did a great job. I mean, he's just a fire plug, man. He comes to work, he does his job, he got his dip in his mouth, he's doing his thing, but he's a guy that understood he wasn't the head coach. He wasn't trying to be the head coach. He was the O-line coach, and that's what he wanted to be, and he never overstepped his boundaries with the head coaches and that kind of stuff. He's a soldier. He came in and he went to work, and he gave guys opportunities. If you were doing good, he'd tell you you're doing good. If you wasn't doing worth a crap, he let you know. He let you know that you wasn't doing worth the crap. But then he spit that dip out at the same time when he was getting on you. So, I mean,
Coach Mantooth, he lets you know where you stand with him.
Always. Always. But no, he was great to work with, and he was great to play under.
And those are some of the very best of coaches. They know what they do. They stay in their lane, so to speak, and they just become the very best at what they do. Speaking of that,
right?
Another coach on my years, and he may have been during your years, Coach Gary Shepard says to tell you hello.
Hey, Sheppy dog. Oh, yeah. See, Shep, I work with Shep too. You got to think now, Gary Shepard, all those guys were with us at Cincinnati and then went to Rice, and then they came to Vanderbilt. Yeah. So
talk about your stint in the USFL.
Well, you know what? I was my rights, should I say, were with the Birmingham Stallions. And I wanted to go to the NFL, of course. It's what every blockhead kid thinks that he can play in the NFL forever, So I was going to New England and going to camp there. And then I messed around and went to the airport and my ticket wasn't there. So I'm calling, and so you gotta understand now, this is before we had cell phones.
Sure.
This is before we had computers on our phone. Or you had to call somebody's house and on a rotary dial phone, and hopefully somebody would answer because there was no answering machine. So I'm at the airport, with my dad. I got my bag getting ready to go to New England for the Patriots for a tryout, and I'm excited about it. Been working out for it for a long time. And I'm standing in the airport and there's no ticket there because the ticket was supposed to be at the counter. There's no ticket there. So finally, after dropping a bunch of quarters in the machine, which was the telephone, I had to put quarters in there to call. And I finally get somebody at the Patriots office. And they said, oh, well, you didn't know. We ended up taking a guy by the name of Gerald Franklin and brought him in to take that position, that last position. I said, no, ma'am, I did not know, and my dad was there. I was heartbroken and ended up going back home. And as soon as I got home, I got a call from Watson Brown. Same day, got a call from Watson Brown. He said, hey, you want to come on down here to Cincinnati and coach? And I said, yeah, coach. Yeah, that's okay. But he said, well, you got to take your GRE in the morning. I said, in the morning? He said, yeah, you got to take it in the morning and you get a good grade. And, then we can move forward and you can be here by Monday. I'm like, wow. Okay. So I took the GRE the next day, got my grade. And on Monday, I was at the University of Cincinnati coaching. So it's amazing how God works and how things work.
In the same day.
Same day.
Next one open.
Same day. And long story short now, that same guy, that Gerald Franklin, that went to New England instead of me, he was in my wedding in 1986.
How did your paths cross again?
I was coaching at Rice University. And he was going to try out for the Houston Oilers. So he came over. He was over there every day. He became one of my workout partners, and we got along, and it was perfect, and then we needed one extra groomsman, and he was the guy. Then he jumped in the wedding.
How cool. All right. Get me to the USFL.
Okay. That's where I was at. We were, so anyway, my rights are taken by Memphis Showboats. And Watson and I talk about it every single day because we're still coaching. I mean, I'm at Cincinnati on what I want to do, and we get to the point when he makes the decision to go to Rice. He says, okay, well, you go ahead and do the football thing. Cause I'm in great shape. I mean, I'm going every day lifting with the players and, getting in shape for football. Cause he knew I wanted to give it a shot. So I go, okay, I'm in camp, having a pretty good camp, It's a tough situation because they got so many people there. The facilities aren't working. It's a new team. It's ice storms, minus 10 degrees or whatever. And they've got, you can either have a sweatshirt or a pair of sweatpants. You can't have a full sweatsuit. Okay. You can't have this. You can't, and the food, you got to go to churches or, it was just not, it was not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So
I'm staying there. We're 2 weeks in, and Watson calls me and on that rotary dial in my room, and he called me probably 3 or 4 days in a row, and he says, well, he's a Mad Dog, we got 15 guys out here that are hurt. 10 of them are in Red Cross jerseys every day. They can't practice. I need you, and I'm like, okay, sure, coach, but I'm still trying to practice, still trying to get ready, seeing how this thing's going. And we're going to practice every day. And coach called me again. And he said, hey, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay you what you're making there to coach. Okay. Last time I checked, I went to Vanderbilt. Okay. And I learned some things at Vanderbilt that's a whole lot easier to make money and blow a whistle than it is to make money and go out there and hit somebody. So it was perfect timing. And so I decided, hey, I'm gonna come on out there. So I go get in my car and grab my stuff and come on out.
And are you still 21, 22 years of age?
I'm 22.
So you might be the same age as some of the seniors at this point.
Right.
Team.
But see, but I came through Vanderbilt. I was 17 when I got there.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I got out of there in 3.5 years. Yeah. Because I went to summer school every year, and I learned the system. When you go to summer school, and I took a full load every session in summer school, I was ready to graduate. Yeah. And so, that being done, it was either now our kids are smart enough to go to grad school and have the school pay for the grad school and that kind of stuff. Back then, that wasn't happening. Yeah. Back then, okay, well, your eligibility, you got, you can probably get another year out of this thing, because you got hurt your freshman year, but why would I get another year when I got to go coach? Yeah. I got a job, I got an opportunity, so that's the USFL.
Well, I tell you, it is amazing how in life, how things can turn. It may seem
right.
But one thing, Coach, I know about you, you're one of the few people who I know who coached or played for both Watson Brown and Mac Brown. And I want you to share, there's a contrast there between the two men, their styles, their personalities. Can you share a little bit about that experience? You shared a little bit about Watson.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Mac and the difference.
Well, the difference is, Watson coached me. Watson also coached my son, at UAB. Mm-hmm. Watson and Mac's mom, this was a phenomenal lady. She loved Mad Dog. She pulled me aside and she told me, she said, you coached for both my sons. You made my sons win championships. I am so proud that you're part of our family, and you're going to be part of this family for the rest of your life, and I thought that was so phenomenal for her to tell me that. Where my boys used to call her grandma, because they would see her at every big game and every bowl game. She would come out to watch when I was with Mac Brown. I did not know Mac Brown. Okay. I knew Watson Brown. Okay. So Watson is the older brother. And I was at Colorado with Bill McCartney. We had just won back-to-back championships and played for 2 national championships and won one of them. So I had a storied career. And then, and Mac McCartney he loved Mad Dog. Bottom line, I was his right-hand soldier. He said, this is your team, you run it. and I loved every minute of it, you know, and I've been fortunate enough to be with guys that in the off season, I was the head coach, bottom line. And the guys all knew that, and they all responded and respected that. It was my job to make sure they were ready. And once they were ready, we'd have our formal ceremony, and I turned it back over to the head coach once the head coach got ready to start the season. We have a whole ceremony. It was a great thing. It was a great situation for many, many years. You know, I worked with Mac Brown for 22 years. You know, there's marriages that don't last that long, you know, and I left Boulder, you know, I left the mountains to go work with Mac. And I had Terry Lewis, who was also passed on, a great offensive line coach. He told me, you know, when Mac called, he said, you need to go see. I said, well, man, we're right here. We're in Boulder. We got Bill McCartney. You know, this thing's going great. He said, dog, you need to go see. He said, Mac is phenomenal. He's tremendous with the athletes. He's just like Mac. You know, so, and, you know, you're in a different part of the country. You'll be in the warmth, because my wife had urticaria, you know, thing where she breaks out and all the cold weather and all that kind of stuff. So she was having problems with that. Long story short, I met Mac, like Mac. He was a lot more, you know, Mac was a more rigid, you know, he's a defensive coach. And then Mac Brown's an offensive coach, you know, and what you'll learn, you know, you play the game, you know, offense coach and defense coaches are different, you know, and Mac was more, I've had a lot of Macs. I mean, you got to think I had McIntyre, Mac Brown, Mac McCartney. Anyway, so McCartney was more of a fire brimstone. You know, Mac Brown was just cool. You know, he was laid back, you know, and his coaches were laid back, and, you know, the whole flow was different, you know, and he embraced me. I embraced him. We were inseparable for 22 years, you know, so, you know.
Were you with him at UNC and at Texas?
Yes. Oh, yeah. See, Mac was 1-10, 1-10. I think he won 4. Then he won 7, maybe. And he went to his first bowl game. And then he hired me. Okay. And then we went 9-10, 11-12, 9-9. I mean, you know, we stayed consistently, you know, and then we come to Texas and we win, you know, because Texas was 3-8, I think. When we got here, and then we won 9 the first year and 9 or 10 the second year. Then it was 10. I mean, we just won, you know. So I've won probably 200 football games with Mac Brown, you know. So that's a lot of wins.
It is a lot of wins.
And that's a lot of wins, you know. But as far as personality wise, they're similar but different. You know what I'm saying? They're both tremendous competitors now. Tremendous competitors. You know, Mac is, when I look at how he takes care of his coaches, he takes care of his players, but he's got an intense fire burning all the time, you know, but you wouldn't know it from the outside because he's college football. I mean, he's a guy that he could be the mayor of North Carolina. He could be the mayor. He could be the governor of Texas. I mean, he's that guy. You know, he's got that kind of personality. I mean, the kids love him. The parents love him. You know, he's just, you know, a lot more outgoing, you know, than Watson is. Watson was a great guy. Watson's players loved him. I loved Watson, still do. I love both of them. You know, so I was blessed to be with both of them. You know, and if you think about all the years I was with both of them, that's almost the majority of my career.
I was going to say it was probably close to 30 years if you add it all together. Well, Jeff, we've got just a couple more minutes, and I sure appreciate you sharing your story with us and all these awesome insights. you just came from Texas. You were there for many, many years. I want your thoughts about Texas and Oklahoma joining the conference. Good for the conference.
I think what you're gonna see. Now you gotta understand that the Texas I coach is different than the Texas right now.
Oh, sure.
You know, when I was at Texas, you know, we played for 2 national championships. We won a bunch of conference championships. We had guys going to the NFL. We were one of the top teams that had guys going back to back to back. I mean, I've got over 300 guys that play professional football. You know, so you know that plus all those Olympians. I mean, I got a couple hundred of them. I mean, just phenomenal athletes.
Yeah, come
through the University of Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And that will show in the SEC, you know, because the Sarkisian guy is a new guy. And Sarkisian seems to be doing everything just like Lee's doing, you know, and he's doing a great job recruiting. And that's the foundation of your football program. You know, and Coach Brown told me, Mad Dog, you're the closer. Bottom line, we bring them to you, you get it done, close the deal. And that's what I did for 22 years, you know, and we got some great ones, you know, and like I said, I'm still in touch with a bunch of them. You know, I had some from North Carolina call me today. You know, those guys are great players. You know, now they're going back down and they're helping Mac do his thing. But long story short, you know, OU is a phenomenal program. You know, they're better than you want them to be, you know, and they hate Texas more than they like themselves, you know, so that's a tremendous rivalry coming back. And I think that's why A&M didn't want them in there, you know, because that A&M and Texas rivalry has, I'm telling you now, that was one of the best games ever, that when we played them on Thanksgiving every year, you know, so, I mean, they also understand that all of a sudden, SEC was already hard. It's going to get a whole lot harder, a whole lot harder, you know. So if people are wondering whether Texas and OU are worthy, they're damn sure worthy. And you'll see that they are really worthy because they take football as serious as Alabama does. You know, when you got Alabamas and Georgias and those teams like that, and they're so serious about that football, Texas and Oklahoma are the same way.
Jeff, I've got 2 more minutes. I need your input on how can we get your book?
Oh, okay. I'll tell you what. I'll let you know that information. I was just trying to see if I had one sitting over here.
Is it on Amazon or is there an online?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Link? It's on Amazon.
Do you mind posting it in the comments section for us?
Yeah, that's no problem. It's no problem at all. I'll do that. Yeah, I'm glad you said something about it.
Absolutely. In 30 seconds or less, I want you to talk, and this is not fair of me, but tell me about the importance of having mentors in a person's life.
I think it's extremely important to have mentors, you know, and you say I got 30 seconds, and I didn't even talk about, you know, Leonard Coleman and Carl Jordan, and, you know, Steve Wade, and, you know, some of those great players. But
we'll have a part 2. You and I'll have a part 2 in a few weeks. Go ahead.
Okay, that's good. Well, the important thing of having mentors, you know, is that you want to listen to people that have done it at a high level before you, you know, and how they did it. You know, those are the people that I listen to. I don't listen to just, you know, the people that are walking around on the street and their opinions on what we should be doing and should not be doing. I listen to folks that have been in the game, that do a great job in the game, or have been professors, or, you know, run CEOs, multi-million-dollar people, billion-dollar people. And, you know, being here at Texas, I've got 4 billionaires that are tremendous people that whatever question I ask them, they'll give you so much information. They'll tell you things that you forget in a heartbeat because it's so powerful, you know. So you got to learn how to get where you're trying to get to. You know, you can go so far on your own, you know, you can read as many books as you want to, you know, but practical application of something is what makes the big difference.
Oh, you've listed so many mentors during our talk that I know have helped you, and you've helped so many as you being a mentor, and it's just you passing it on to the next generation. I can't thank you enough, Coach, for spending an hour with me tonight and us getting to know each other just a little bit, you sharing your story. So thank you, and I really do appreciate it.
Well, great. And I appreciate all the guys. I appreciate what you're doing and trying to bring all these guys back together again, because we've been disjointed for way too long. Way too long. I mean, I've got these Zoom conferences with my guys from North Carolina, my guys from Texas, and my guys from Rice, you know. And I mean, all the different places that I've coached at, they have calls either weekly or bi-weekly, you know, and they keep each other young and they keep each other accountable for what's going on. And you're getting the guys from Vanderbilt going now, and it's time. It's time to do it.
It is time. It's also, I want to wish Miss Beverly Brothers has finally announced her retirement this next week. So after almost 40 years at Vanderbilt, well deserved. But Beverly, who's been on the show, happy retirement. You guys be safe. Anchor down. See you next week.
Hey, Big Al Phillips. Love you, man.